Hi everyone, Sailor Moon here, and Sailor Earth, Ernest here, and today we're going to talk about, the mini slights in the Sailor Moon followership, because there are sides in the Sailor Moon followership. In the beginning, in the Sailor Moon followership, there are many sides. You might think that a followership has many sides, and it does. First, you have one side that only likes, Viz. And before, that side only liked the Toei one. They hated the Deacon Cloverway one. And then when the Viz one came out, everyone ended up making a new arm of the followership, and that was the ones that liked the Viz arm. And some of these folks, not all of them, but some of them out there, like to guilt and shame anyone who does like Sailor Moon, or at least likes the Deacon Cloverway one. They'll say things like, "Oh well, didn't you see the Didn't you see the Viz one? Oh, why do you call them by their Latinist, Frenchist, Spanish, Hebrewist, Farsiest, and Blacklandish names instead of calling them by their Dawnish, borrowed names?" They might also say things like, they might, guilt you or shame you for liking the Deke or Cloverway one under the grounds that Deke and Cloverway did a lot of skimming, either by by cutting out some sagas of the show, either shifting names, stead names, strike names. Yeah, we get that. And a lot of them out there will say, "Oh, well, it's not the true Sailor Moon den." They'll say, "Oh, what the Deke and Cloverway one, it's not the true Sailor Moon one at all." Or something like that. Because that's what they'll say. Now, have I ever dealt with anyone from that slight of the Sailor Moon followership? Here and there I have, but not as many as other folks do. Most folks in the Sailor Moon followership in the Sailor Moon followership tend to, say, "Yeah, we all like Sailor Moon, even if we like unlike takes of it." And then there's also another side of the Sailor Moon followership that is against, the the RAA, the RAE one, or Renaissance Atlantic Entertainment, or New Birth Great Sea Glee one, which really was the first Sailor Moon ever made, but no one ever saw it until 2022 YL. And some folks don't like that one. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of folks would say, "Oh, well, that isn't," they'd say, "That's not the true Sailor Moon." They'd say, "Oh, well, the names were shifted. The stead names were shifted. The strike names were shifted. Some of the sagas of the first following and some of the two-diff following were skimmed. And that was just dealing with the Deke one. The Cloverway one, they might say, "Oh, well, they made him drive on the right side of the street instead of the left side of the street. Oh, they put some clothing on a fiend that was clothesless." Now, what they both tend to also get on is that the unstraight folks in Sailor Moon, and there were some, Zoisite and Millikite and every other take of Sailor Moon are unstraight, and they didn't like how Zoisite became a woman. They also, there's Sarah Uranus and Sailor Neptune, Sailor Skyworld and Sailor SeaWorld, Mara Michelle, who were unstraight lovers or whatever their kinship was, and they didn't like how Cloverway made them near kin. They also bring up about how Fisheye, they say, was a man who liked to clothe himself in woman's clothing. But I don't know if that was true or not. And then how Fisheye became a woman. Now, if you overlook all of those things that they like to bitch and rant about, you know, what makes them hate the Deacon, Cloverway, Sailor Moon so much. And then they'll say that the Viz one's got every single thing in there that the Deacon, Cloverway one didn't have. They're going to say, oh, well, you get a lot of good fighting and good wrestling. When you say Sailor Earth, oh, yeah, Sailor Moon, yeah, Serena, I would. But I do see the fighting, the wrestling is still there. Yeah, they may have cut out, you know, some folks getting, you know, being slapped or something. Yeah, that may have been cut out, you know. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, that's the only thing that they can say, oh, it was over wrestling. No, slapping and smacking was cut out. Yes, it was. Well, Deke mostly cut out the slapping or smacking. Cloverway, I don't really think they did. So, and if you're not, and at the end of the day, some of these folks have the gall to say that they are the true Sailor Moon followers. And if you like Deke or Cloverway, then you're not a true Sailor Moon follower. Now, I don't know where they got that from, why some of them think that, but they do. You know, some of them truly think that. And then they might ask you things like, well, didn't you ever see the Viz one? Yes, I did. I've watched that one sundriest times. Not as many times as I watched the Deacon Cloverway one, true, but I have watched it. You know, now since it's on Cartoon Network or Drawing Show Folkwork, I watch it again every Friday at 5. So, yes, I have seen that one. But I grew up on the Deke one, the Cloverway one. And they might ask you and say, well, why don't you call them by their Dawnish borrowed names? One, I don't have to call them by those Dawnish borrowed names if I don't want to. If I want to call them by their Latinish, Frenchish, Spanish, Hebrewish, you know, Farsius, and Blacklandish names, then yes, that's what I'll call them, because those are the right names for the world that they were in the Deke world, in a Cloverway world. Another thing that they sometimes do, you know, is, well, that's mostly what they bring up. Then they always bitch about how can you handle names being shifted, stead names being shifted, strike names being shifted. Well, the strike names are being shifted from following to following, so yeah. And as far as the name shift, we already talked about those names being shifted. And stead names, well, unless you live in Dawnland and you know all the nears and the shares and the Reich names, great for you. But for someone who never been to Dawnland, is not going to know those names. So yeah, having to shift those names was a big thing. Now, as far as some folks, you know, making a big deal about those things, they do. Back to you now, Sailor Moon. Well, thank you, Sailor Earth. Thank you, Ernest. I mean, at the end of the day, if you like the Viz one, great for you, because I do. If you like the Deke one and the Cloverway one, great for you, because I like those too. I like all three of them. But they're being slights to the Sailor Moon followership, the Deke and Cloverway side, the Viz side, and then that's those three sides fighting each other, because there are folks who only like the Deke and Cloverway one and hate the Viz one. And then there's folks who like the Viz one but hate the Deke and Cloverway one. There are folks out there. At the end of the day, all Sailor Moon followers still like Sailor Moon at the end of the day, or they wouldn't be watching it. And if that has to do with, you know, doll gathering or clothing playing or whatever you do, then good for you. Now, I'm going to end this film now because I'm going to go back inside now because it started raining, or it was raining at the time the film was started. I, Sailor Moon Serena. I, Sailor Earth Ernest, and we'll see you later. Goodbye. Farewell. So long.